Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at a stack of research that feels a bit like a collision between three completely different worlds.
It really does.
Yeah, if you were organizing a dinner party for physics concepts, these three usually would not end up at the same table. We are talking about quantum mechanics, fractal geometry, and nanoelectronics.
It is a strange mix. Usually you have the quantum people in one corner, the engineers in another, and the fractal mathematicians staring at ferns in a third. But this research forces them all to talk to each other.
And the reason they have to talk is because of where this research takes place. We're zooming in to the mesoscopic scale. I feel like we hear microscopic and nanoscopic all the time, but mesoscopic is kind of the awkward middle child of physics, isn't it?
That is the perfect way to frame it. It's the borderland. It's that fuzzy transitional zone between the atomic scale, where an individual atom behaves according to strict quantum rules, and the macroscopic world where we live, where things are solid and predictable.
Right.
In the mesoscopic zone, you have enough atoms to make a structure, but few enough that the weird quantum rules still apply.
So it's large enough to touch, theoretically, but small enough to be weird.
Exactly. And our guide for this trip is a 2021 paper from Physica E. The title is a bit of a mouthful. It's called Quantization of Foster Mesoscopic Circuit and DC-pumped Josephson Parametric Amplifier from Fractal Measure Arguments. It's by Rami Ahmad El-Nabulsi.
Okay, fractal measure arguments catches my eye immediately. When I think of fractals, I think of the Mandelbrot set or those trippy infinite zoom videos you see online. I definitely do not think of circuit boards or amplifiers.
And that's the friction point.
Yeah.
See, traditionally when we do physics, even high-level quantum physics, we tend to idealize the playing field.
You make it neat.
Right. We assume the space the electrons are moving through is smooth. We assume the geometry is Euclidean. So nice straight lines, flat planes, integer dimensions like 1D, 2D, or 3D.
The classic spherical cows in a vacuum.
Precisely. We simplify the world to make the math solvable. But El-Nabulsi is arguing that at the mesoscopic scale, in materials like thin organic semiconductors or quantum dots, the world isn't smooth. It's rough. It has what we call fractal anisotropy.
So instead of an electron sliding across a perfectly polished ice rink, it's trying to navigate a jagged, craggy mountain range.
That is exactly the visual you should have. And the core mission of this deep dive is to understand what happens to our electronics, specifically high-tech amplifiers used in quantum computers, when we stop pretending the world is smooth and start doing the math for the jagged reality.
And spoiler alert for you listening at home, it turns out that acknowledging this roughness actually solves a massive problem with stability that has been bugging physicists for a while.
A huge problem, yeah.
But before we get to the solution, we have to understand the problem. The paper starts with something really basic, the LC circuit.
Right. The LC circuit is the bread and butter of electronics. It's an inductor, which is the L, and a capacitor, the C, hooked together. Energy just sloshes back and forth between them.
I remember this analogy from school. The capacitor stores energy like a stretched spring, and the inductor stores energy like a moving mass.
Exactly. In fact, the paper explicitly uses the harmonic oscillator analogy to explain this. Mass corresponds to inductance. Position corresponds to charge. And the spring constant is the inverse of capacitance.
Okay, let me make sure I have that. Inductance is mass. That actually makes sense intuitively. If something has a lot of mass, it's hard to get it moving, and once it's moving, it's hard to stop. So high inductance resists changes in current.
Correct. Now, in high school physics, and even most college physics, mass is constant. If I hand you a kilogram weight, it weighs a kilogram whether you are standing in the kitchen or the living room.
Right, it doesn't change based on where it is.
But in these mesoscopic materials, that rule breaks down. We encounter something called position-dependent inductance, or PDI.
Okay, hang on. So you're saying the mass of the electron or the inductance of the circuit changes depending on where the charge is located in the material?
Yes. Think about it like this. Imagine walking through an empty room. Your effective mass, how hard it is to move you, feels normal. Now, imagine walking through a crowded party where everyone is shoulder to shoulder.
I have to shove people out of the way. I feel heavier because I have more resistance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In these complex nanomaterials, the crowd isn't evenly distributed. Some spots are empty and some are packed. So as the electron moves, its effective mass is constantly fluctuating based on its position.
That sounds like an absolute nightmare for the electron, and honestly, a nightmare for the mathematician trying to track it.
It is a mathematical nightmare. The paper cites the Shockley-Ramo theorem, which basically says that in these semiconductor setups, the charge you induce depends on the distance the charge is moved. So we know this position dependence is real. It's a physical fact.
But standard quantum mechanics assumes a constant mass.
Right. So the map doesn't match the territory. Not even close. If you use standard equations for a variable mass system, you get results that just do not make sense. You need a completely new framework.
And this is where the fractals come in, the LS method.
Right. LSS stands for the Lie and Ostoja-Starzewski approach. It's a way of modeling materials that aren't uniform. Instead of treating the material as a solid block, it treats it as a fractal medium.
We need to define this carefully because fractal is a buzzword people throw around a lot.
Right.
We aren't just talking about pretty shapes, we're talking about dimension.
We are. In a standard 3D brick, the dimension is exactly 3. But in a fractal medium, the dimension might be something like 2.7 or 2.9.
Which hurts my brain. How can you have 2.7 dimensions?
Think of a piece of paper. That's 2D. Now, crumple it up into a ball.
Okay.
It's not quite a solid 3D sphere because there are gaps and holes inside it, but it takes up space more than a flat sheet. It has a fractal dimension somewhere between 2 and 3.
Okay, that actually helps a lot. So the material these circuits are made of is like that crumpled paper. It's full of holes, gaps, and clusters on a microscopic level.
Precisely. And the LSM method allows us to do calculus on that crumpled paper. It changes how we calculate gradients and integrals. The paper introduces a characteristic length and confines the electric charge to moving along a specific fractal path.
So the electron can't just teleport anywhere. It has to follow the crumpled folds of the material.
Exactly. And because the electron is confined to this fractal geometry, the Schrödinger equation, which is the holy grail of quantum math, looks completely different. L-Nabulsi derives a new version of it for this specific, messy, fractal environment.
And when he solves this new equation, he finds something really interesting about the energy levels, specifically the ground state energy.
Yes, the ground state is the lowest possible energy a system can have. In standard physics, it's usually 1/2 h bar omega. But in this fractal model, the ground state energy is actually larger.
Why does being in a fractal make the energy go up?
It comes down to confinement. Think about the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. The more you confine a particle, the more you restrict exactly where it can be, the more its momentum fluctuates.
So because the fractal crumpled paper structure gives the electron fewer places to be than a smooth open space, the electron gets jittery.
Beautifully put. That jitter is energy. By squeezing the electron into a fractal geometry, you raise the floor of its energy.
Yeah.
And here's the kicker. This higher ground state energy matches what we actually see in experiments with quantum dots.
Wow. So the fractal math isn't just a neat theory. It actually explains why these nanomaterials have higher energy levels than the old textbooks said they should.
Exactly. It validates the entire model. The paper mentions using confluent hypergeometric functions to map this out.
Which sounds like a spell from Harry Potter. But I assume it's just the complex math needed to handle those weird fractional dimensions.
Basically, yes. It's a class of functions that lets you solve differential equations when things aren't simple sines and cosines. It gives us the discrete energy levels for a world that isn't perfectly smooth.
Okay, so we've established that the material is fractal, and this raises the baseline energy. Now we have to apply this to the actual device. The paper talks about the Foster circuit and the Josephson parametric amplifier.
These are the heavy hitters of nanoelectronics. Let's start with the Foster circuit. A simple LC circuit is just one loop. But real materials have complex behaviors over different frequencies. A Foster circuit is a way of modeling that complexity by chaining together an infinite series of LC circuits.
Like a chain link fence instead of just a single hoop?
Right. It allows you to model a broadband response. It shows how the material behaves across a wide range of signals, not just one pitch.
And the Josephson parametric amplifier. You called this the star of the show earlier.
It is. This is the device that makes reading a quantum computer possible. Quantum signals, like the state of a qubit, are incredibly weak. If you try to measure them with a normal amplifier, the noise of the amplifier itself drowns out the signal.
It's like trying to hear a whisper in a crowded nightclub.
Exactly. A Josephson parametric amplifier, or JPA, is designed to amplify that whisper without adding noise. It works on a principle called parametric pumping.
I've heard the playground swing analogy for this.
It is definitely the best one. Imagine a child on a swing. If you want them to go higher, you can push them. That's a standard amplifier. But there's another way.
They pump their legs.
Right. If the child pumps their legs, or lowers and raises their center of gravity at exactly the right moments, specifically at twice the frequency of the swing, They can build up momentum without anyone pushing them at all.
So they are changing a parameter of the system, their center of mass, to add energy.
Correct. In a JPA, we use a Josephson junction, which is a nonlinear inductor, and we pump it with a DC voltage or a strong microwave tone. We change the inductance rhythmically to amplify the signal passing through.
Okay, so we have this super sensitive swing set. But here is where the trouble starts. In the real world, these things get hot, or at least warm by quantum standards.
And that is the conflict. The paper references previous work, specifically by a group led by Russer. When they tried to model these circuits using standard math, they found that at high temperatures, the energy expectation values became time-dependent.
Time-dependent. That sounds innocuous, but in this context, does that mean unstable?
It means chaotic. It means the energy is fluctuating wildly over time. If you are trying to use this device to read a qubit, and the baseline energy of your amplifier is bouncing all over the place just because of thermal noise, your device is totally useless.
It's like the child on the swings suddenly starting to vibrate uncontrollably just because the sun came out?
Exactly. The previous theories predicted that these devices shouldn't work well at high temperatures because of this instability. But we know they do function. So there was a gap between the math and the reality.
And this is where Al-Nabulsi drops the mic.
He applies the LSA fractal method to the Josephson parametric amplifier. He recalculates the energy expectation values, but this time he treats the circuit material as fractal, not smooth.
And what happens to the wild fluctuations?
They vanish.
Completely.
Well, they stabilize. The math shows that at very high temperatures, the energy expectation value becomes finite and time independent. It flatlines to a stable, predictable value.
So wait, by acknowledging that the road is bumpy and fractal, the ride actually gets smoother.
That is the counterintuitive beauty of it. The fractal nature of the material seems to dampen the thermal chaos. The roughness restricts the available states in a way that prevents the energy from spiraling out of control.
That is huge. It basically says that the imperfections in the material are what allow the device to work stably.
It suggests that imperfection is the wrong word entirely. The fractal structure is a feature, not a bug. The paper derives a specific formula for this high-temperature stability, and it has two parts.
Let's break those down for everyone.
The first part looks like Planck's energy formula, which deals with the quantum nature of light. The second part is the thermal equilibrium term, which deals with heat.
So it successfully marries the quantum world and the thermodynamics world.
Exactly. Usually, those two fight each other. Quantum effects wash out when things get hot. But the fractal dimension term in the equation acts as a bridge. It modifies how the heat interacts with the quantum system, essentially locking it into a stable state.
So if you are an engineer designing the next quantum computer, this tells you that you don't need to panic quite as much about thermal noise, provided you understand the fractal geometry of your components.
It tells you that the geometry matters just as much as the material. It gives you a new knob to turn. If you can control the fractal dimension of your nanomaterials, you can control the stability of your amplifier.
Which brings us back to the big picture. We started this deep dive talking about a dinner party with quantum mechanics, fractals, and electronics. It turns out they aren't just having dinner. They're completely inseparable.
They are. We've learned that at the mesoscopic scale, you cannot strip away the geometry. You can't pretend the world is smooth.
It makes me think about the smoothness of everything around us. We look at a polished metal table or the glass on our phone, and we think flat. But this paper implies that if you go deep enough, specifically to this weird middle ground scale, everything is a coastline.
And that raises a massive philosophical question. We build our laws of physics on calculus that assumes smooth, continuous curves. But if the fundamental building blocks of our technology, and perhaps matter itself, are fractal,
then maybe the universe isn't smooth at all. Maybe it's fractal all the way down.
It's very possible. If space-time itself has a fractal dimension, then our smooth physics is just an approximation that works for big, clumsy giants like us, but fails for the electron.
And the fact that our most advanced technology, quantum computing, only makes mathematical sense when we admit the universe is rough, that feels like a really big clue.
A very big clue.
Well, on that slightly existential note, we are going to wrap up. Next time you look at a microchip, remember it's not a flat highway for electrons, it's a fractal mountain range, and that is exactly why it works. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Always a pleasure.
See you next time.